Welcome students. Today we are going to see a poem in Unit 2, 12th Standard English. That is Our Cashew Nut Tree, written by Toru Dutt. Toru Dutt was a Bengali poet. She wrote her poems in English as well as French. She died at the age of 21. Though she lived short time in her life in the world, she created a great impact to the readers through her poems. In this video, we are going to see a beautiful poem, and it is about a tree named Cashew Nut Tree. The poet describes completely about the tree, and we come to know how the tree is important in her life, as it brings her back the childhood memories, the nostalgic memories of her childhood. So it's nothing but it's about a love and affection between the tree and the poetess. Whenever she plays, whenever she sees the tree, she can get back the memories that she had with her beloved one, with whom she played underneath the tree. So it's a complete affection on the tree from the poetess. That's what we are going to see here. Let us read the poetic lines. Like a huge python winding round and round, the rugged trunk indented deep with scars, up to its very summit near the stars, a creeper climbs, in whose embraces bound no other tree could live, but gallantly. So this stanza describes the majestic appearance of the cashew nut tree. You could see the cashew nut tree among the coastline in India. So it's very close to the poet's heart. She says, like a huge python winding round and round. The first line, she compares the creeper as python. Python in the sense non-venomous snake. The rugged trunk in the sense a very rocky surface is called rugged trunk, indented deep with scars, a mark left on the skin. So on the surface of the tree, it seems to be very hard, and it's winding round and round in a roundabout course. The creepers made its round around the tree, up to its very summit near the stars. So it stands and it's very tall up to the stars. It can hit the stars. So the height of the tree is described by using this line, up to its very summit near the stars. A creeper climbs, in whose embraces bound no other tree could live. The poem begins with this description of the tree. The poet says that the creeper has wound itself around the rugged trunk of the cashew nut tree like a huge python. The creeper has left deep marks on the trunk of the tree. You could see in this picture. But gallantly, the giant wears the scarf, and flowers are hung in crimson clusters, all the boughs among, whereon all day are gathered bird and bee, and often at nights the garden overflows with one sweet song that seems to have no close, sung darkling from a tree while men repose. Giant, superhuman form. It's a majestic appearance that is called giant. So here the tree is compared as giant. It's not compared to Jane, but it is compared as Jane. So the line Jane wears the scarf and flowers are hung as a personification. Crimson, a deep red color, clusters, group of things, group of similar things placed together is called clusters. So in crimson, clusters all the boughs among, boughs in the sense branches, whereon all day are gathered bird and bee, and often at night the garden overflows with one sweet song that seems to have no close, sung darkling from a tree while men repose. Repose in the sense rest. When men are at rest, the poet can hear a song from the tree. It seems no end for the song, and the song is sung by nightingale. So the tree is so strong that it bears the tight hold of the creeper. The tree is described as being gallant and possibly brave, as very few trees could survive in the stranglehold of this creeper. The poet then goes on to describe the life that thrives amidst every facet of the tree. The cashew nut tree is covered with the creeper, which bears red crimson flowers, which appear as though the tree is wearing a colorful scarf around it. So see the picture in this color, in crimson color of flowers, like crimson flowers, the trees appears with red color of the flowers. Often at night, the garden echoes, and it seems to be jubilant, and the song has no end. It continues till dawn. When first my casement is wide open thrown, at dawn my eyes delighted on its rest, sometimes and most in winter on its crest. A grey baboon sits statue-like alone, watching the sunrise while on lower boughs. His puny offspring leap about and play. So casement is type of window which is kept open on one side. At dawn my eyes delighted on its rest, sometimes and most in winter on its crest. Crest, which means the top of the tree. A grey baboon sits statue-like alone, watching the sunrise, while on lower boughs his puny offspring leap about and play. Puny means small or weak. Here it refers the young one of the baboon. What does the poet says? The poet says, when she opens the casement, she could see the baboon which is sitting on the top of the tree, seeing the sunrise, and its young one leaping and jumping high and down the tree. At the dawn, when the poet opens her window, she delighted to see the cashew nut tree. Mostly in winters, a grey baboon is seen sitting on the crest of the tree, seeing the sunrise with her young ones leaping and playing in the tree's boughs. And far and near kokilas hail the day, and to their pastures went sleepy cows, and the shadow and the broad tank cast by that whole tree, so beautiful and vast, the water lily spring like snow enmassed. Went in the sense stroll, enmassed in the sense amazed, gathered in a mass. So she describing the beautiful scenery in and around the tree when she opens the window at the early morning at dawn. Whatever she could see, all seems to be very happy, and it brings happiness to the poet also. So at first she could see the baboon with its young one playing in and around the tree. And the second scenery that she sees it, the cows on the lawn. And far and near kokilas hail the day. So from the tree she could see a kokila. Kokila is a bird similar to the cuckoo, which can sing and sing a song, and it's very beautiful to hear. So that's what the poetess can hear from her casement. And to their pastures, a land covered with grass is called pastures, suitable for grazing cattle or sheep. So pastures went our sleepy cows. So from there again she could see the cows which are grazing. After grazing the grass, they could take rest on the lawn, and the shadow and the broad tank cast. So in the lake, water lilies lake, by that whole tree, so beautiful and vast, the water lily spring like snow enmassed. So on the tree there is a kokila which is singing song. Beneath it, nearby the lawn, there is a cow. After grazing it, after having grassed it, it takes rest, and she could also see water lilies which frost deposit on the tree. So it all seems to be very beautiful scenery to the poetess. So the tree brings her happiness and her childhood memories, nostalgic memories of her childhood days. But not because of its magnificent, dear is the cashew nut to my soul. Beneath it we have played, though years may roll. O sweet companions, loved with love intense, for your shakes, shall the tree be ever dear? Torudutt says that it is not because of the majestic appearance of the cashew nut tree that it is dear to her heart and soul, but also that she, along with her siblings who already died, with her siblings spend happy moments underneath it. So when she was singing with her brothers, with her beloved ones, Torudutt played underneath the tree. Though the tree looks majestic as giant, it is not close to her heart, but underneath it she played with her beloved ones. So she could remember the happiness and the happy days that she had spent with her beloved ones when she was young underneath the tree, so that it is very close to her heart. She takes it as not only an object but very kind to her heart. It's very close to her heart. The tree is very close to her, to the heart of the poetess. So she cannot avoid it. She always could remember and thinking of the cashew nut tree, because it is the only thing which can bring back the memories of her beloved ones who are not alive at present. But whenever she see that tree, she could remember and bring back the happiness that she had with them when she was young. Blent with our images, it shall arise in memory till the hot tears blind my eyes. So she thinking of them, and her mind is full of their images that cause her shed tears. What is that touch, like murmur that I hear? Touch, a piece of music expressing sadness, like murmuring, like the sea breaking on a single beach, single mass of pebbles. It's like shiny stones that you could see on the seashore. That is called shingle, mass of pebbles. So the song which expressing sadness, it's compared to the sea which breaks the single. So when the single is being crashed, when the single is being broken by the water, the sea water, it creates a sound. That sound is compared to the touch, and it's nothing but it's the tree's lament, an eerie speech that haply to the unknown land may reach. She is far away from her native land. She is in France, she is somewhere in Italy, where actually the poet studied. So she is in Italy, but far away, it is far away from India, far away from her native. Though it is long distance, she could hear the lament of the tree, of her absent in a nearby the tree. So the tree is lamenting, and it is expecting her arrival. As the poetess is not nearby the tree itself is lamenting. Where you are, I am all alone. So it's kind of imagination of the poetess about the tree. Though she is in faraway country, she could hear the song, she could hear the lament of the tree. She is thinking about the tree and its condition right now. So though she is far away. Unknown, yet well known to the eye of faith. Ah, I have heard that wail far, far away, in distant lands, by many a sheltered bay, when slumbered in his cave the water wraith, and the waves gently kissed the classic shore of France or Italy beneath the moon. Wail in the sense, cry of pain. In pain, if you cry, that's called wail. Bay, inlet of sea. Wraith, ghost like image, that water on the seashore. It seems like terrific, ghost like image. Shore, shore means water nearer to land. Toru Dutt has brought out the theme of nature as something that shares feeling with humans, that lightens the burden on the heart. When earth lay tranced in a dreamless swoon, tranced in the sense dreaming, and every time the music rose before mine inner vision rose a form sublime, thy form, O tree, as in my happy prime I saw thee in my own loved native clime. The poet continues with a description of how strong the image of the trees, even when in lands far away, even in France and Italy, actually where the poet studied. She can hear the tree's memory and importance for the sake of those who are now dead, and looks again to her own death, hoping that the tree be spread obscurity. Therefore, I fain would consecrate a lay. Feign, eagerness, consecrate, declare, decision, happy to be happened. Unto thy honor, tree, beloved of those who now in blessed sleep for a repose. Repose in the sense rest. Dearer than life to me, alas, were they. Must thou be numbered when my days are done, with deathless trees like those in Borrowdale. Borrowdale is a place where you can see the yew trees. And Wordsworth, it is also called the works of Wordsworth. So in his works Borrowdale, Wordsworth written and described about yew trees. As he had written about the yew trees, it is deathless. Still, it can be recognized, remembered, and it is worshipped by the readers. Whenever it takes long life, the writing of the Wordsworth, yew trees can live long life. So he made it immortalized. The yew tree is immortalized by the poet Wordsworth in his writing. So, like that, the poetess Toru Dutt also wants that the trees to be remembered, and it wants to get lifelong, long lifetime. Though her time has been counted, though her time has been done, after her life, the tree is to be worshipped, the tree is to be remembered of her love and affection, happiness that she had with her beloved when she was young. So, like Wordsworth, she also wants to consecrate the tree in her writing. Under whose awful branches lingered pale, fear trembling hope and death the skeleton, and time the shadow, and thou wake the west, that would thy beauty fain, O fain rigors, my love defend thee from oblivion's curse. She immortalizes the tree through this poem, like how Wordsworth sanctified the yew trees of Borrowdale. She says, may love defend thee from oblivion's curse. Oblivion in the state of forgetfulness. So the oblivion in the sense forgetfulness, so it may be forgotten. She says, may love defend thee from oblivion's curse, expressing her wish that love shield her tree against the curse of forgetfulness. So it should be remembered after her life, after her days. It should be remembered because this is the only object. It is the only thing in the world after her life which can remember, which can talk about the life of Torudat and her beloved ones. So, expressing her wish that love shield her tree against the curse of forgetfulness, that the tree be remembered out of love and not because of it, not because it cannot be forgotten. So, finally, what she tries to say, she wants to make the tree immortalized, which means it's to be remembered after her days. So it's a kind of thanksgiving poem given by the poet to the trees. So she had a great happiness, enjoyment, unforgettable moment she had with the trees, underneath the trees, with her beloved ones when she used to play with them. They are dead already, they are not alive now, and she also has to be done in her life. After her life, after her days, the tree must be remembered, so that the poetess Dorudat has written the poem Casuarna Tree in course of remembrance of the tree. So it's a complete affection that she has towards the tree. The poet remembers the tree because of the many happy memories of childhood days that are linked to it, which are a source of comfort and consolation to her in another country. The poem, therefore, underlines the importance of memories in human life. That is what the poem Our Casuarna Tree, written by Torudat. Here we can see poetic devices used by the poet. Zoomorphism. Actually, it is new to you all. Zoomorphism, one of the literary devices used in the poem, which means describing something using animal term. Here, the vine creeper is described as described as python using animal term, like a huge python winding round and round, the rugged trunk indented deep with scars. So the first line can be considered as zoomorphism. Zoomorphism means a poetic lines or an object in the poetic lines described using animal terms is called zoomorphism. Personification, which means non-human objects are given human attributes. See the example. The giant wears the scarf and flowers are hung. So here the tree is referred as giant. The tree is compared as giant. It is not compared to giant, it is compared as giant. So the line is personification. So the tree is personified as giant. You know what is simile very well. The word like or as is used to compare things. Take examples. A grey baboon sits statue like. So baboon sits like statue. So the baboon, the object, here the baboon is compared as statue. So simile. The water lilies spring. The water lilies spring like snow enmassed. As I said in the beginning, white frost of the water lilies deposit on the tree. So here the water lilies compared as snow enmassed. So it's a simile. Like the sea breaking on a single beach. So the dirge that the poet could hear on the seashore. So the dirge is compared as breaking on a shingle by the beach, by the water, the water of the beach. So that's what it is also simile. So we have seen three different kinds of poetic devices: zoomorphism, personification, and simile. Don't forget to recollect and remember all these poetic devices and also the meaning and vocabulary used in the poems. So do read and recollect all the appreciation questions and write it down and memorize all the important words that you could see in the poems, and remember all the poetic devices. Thank you for watching this video. I will see you with a new topic in the next video. Thank you, students.